Nessa, you're of course welcome we can chat some more if you want. Um, so last time, Greg and a couple other, Greg from ORNL, I think y'all know him. We're here, and Greg kind of went through some of the sustainability metrics and tools that they're building for their environment, and it's actually quite exciting, I thought, looking at sustainability metrics for the health of scientific and research software in particular, and these are the four main like classifications they went through for projects: impact, community, resilience, and quality. And some of the principles underlying how they selected these categories of metrics for their software. And I was pretty impressed with the progress that they had made since Greg, since we last had this call.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, it's interesting to hear that because I'm part of that project.
Yeah,
And I sit in on the metrics call from time to time, but I'm not on all of them by any means. And it's hard for me, I think, to be able to judge how much progress has been made. So I think it's interesting to hear that comment from you.
yeah, and I mean it's just based on, I think the last time that we talked with Greg in this call, they were really still sort of forming what it was they were going to look at, and the descriptions Greg shared with us last time really provided a very detailed, well thought through set of ideas and reasons for pursuing the metrics they are. And also, I don't think he was able to share it with us directly, but he did share some things related to the dashboard that they're building, just that they have this code that's out there, and that they're building the dashboard
Yep.
um,
Yep.
like this, and making it available, and it produces. I think he did share like a functioning version of it, but he wasn't able to share. I'm sorry if can you hear the background noise where I am?
No.
Good, because it involves a screaming baby. I'm at my hotel in Denver for Open Source Summit, and yeah, so I thought, yeah, it was just really, really impressive what they had accomplished in the time since we talked last.
There is so one another thing that's interesting about this, which maybe is interesting to you both as well, or anybody who's watching this recording, um, is that these metrics are based on public information.
Yeah,
And we as a project kind of have a couple of different, I don't know, being pushed in a couple of different ways, maybe, in that we've been funded by Department of Energy to actually kind of do this work and to provide these metrics to them.
right.
But the projects actually don't necessarily want these metrics to be public. Uh, right, depending on what they are, even though they're based on entirely public information. Um, so we're kind of trying to figure out how to work between those two different pressures, I guess.
One of the that's a really certainly we've encountered that in the chaos community before. There's a couple of ways that we've managed it. One is things that are public are presented in a very sort of general way, so that while you can see different trends, there's no judgment or assessment assigned to them. And I think one of the things that can get you in trouble with the projects that are looking at the metrics is if there's like a dashboard with a stoplight, like yellow, green, or red, and putting projects in categories through the metrics, that people tend to object to that. And so try not to rate what the metrics say or even judge projects against each other. Sort of what it helps a specific project see its metrics without making a dashboard public that would allow tons and tons of comparisons. The other thing that we do, and this principle I think carries forward with everything in chaos, is there are no metrics at the individual level. And so people are not as often, developers are not as worried about seeing the metrics in public because they're not like looking at individual, they're not trying to assess individual developer performance at any stage or point. Perhaps where that becomes problematic in scientific software is that there can be a very small number of people uh, doing all the work. So activity like metrics, even if they're by the project, might reveal more than on a larger scale project with hundreds or thousands of contributors.
Um, yeah, that makes sense. I think maybe there also may be a difference with scientific projects. I mean, I agree with you about the fact that there are less developers potentially, although there certainly are open source projects that have very few developers as well, or more general ones. But I think it's often the projects, the scientific projects, I think are often trying to think how to say this. I guess the developer's identity is more as part of the project than as an individual, often in scientific projects. And so I think they're more concerned about kind of how the project is seen rather than how they're seen necessarily.
Mhm.
Or they see that how the project is seen is how maybe how they're seen as part of how the project is seen, as opposed to them being very separate.
I think that's really good insight. Um, that makes sense because from my own limited experience, I think a lot of the folks doing scientific computing don't come at it from a computing background at the first order. They often come at it from whatever their actual scientific discipline is, often in the life sciences. Uh, and so I think to that extent, sometimes I also see uh, a higher degree of reluctance to have somebody look at their code or critique their code because writing code isn't their first discipline. Um, they need it to work. They don't
Right.
need it to be elegant in the eyes of a computer science person.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I think in the I guess in the scientific world when we often talk about encouraging, sorry, there was somebody who was talking in the background. I was trying to figure out if that was somebody important
Was
or,
that
but
me?
that's, yeah, but it wasn't related to us, so
Sorry.
don't worry. Um,
Okay.
uh, so, um, so I was going to say when we try to encourage researchers to share their code as part of their papers or just in general.
Hmm.
And the two main, I guess maybe the three main reasons they don't want to.
Hmm.
One is that they're afraid somebody's going to use their code to do something. Maybe they're going to get some new science result that person didn't have time to get yet, or something else, or they're going to use it in some incorrect way, and then the code will get blamed rather than the person who used it. Um, so that's one. The second one is that they don't want to share their code because there might be bugs and they're afraid somebody will find them, which is a horrible reason not to share your code. And the third one is that they're embarrassed about the quality of the code and they don't want to see they don't want people to see how they've written it.
Yeah, the certainly I've certainly talked with people about they're embarrassed by the quality, and I think that's pretty closely related to not wanting other people to go through your code and find the bugs, which is not the way I think about it as a CS person, but I understand.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, when somebody says something about bugs, then I mean, the kind of very quick counter is like, wouldn't you rather know if there are bugs?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and even if
And
if somebody uses their code improperly, that would even be hard that'd be hard to for someone to claim without. But yeah, I understand that one too.
yeah, and the quality one, the typical kind of, I don't know, response to that is like, eh, it's just the way it is. Nobody's code is perfect, and it doesn't. I mean, if it works, it doesn't really matter what it looks like, right? Um, you're not necessarily trying to get people to use it. You're just trying to make people able to verify what you've done.
Exactly.
Anyhow, sorry. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
no, I think that's really helpful. I think those distinctions for how scientific software folks are distinct from an open source perspective, and the concerns they have about sharing metrics publicly, I think are I think it creates a very interesting set of challenges for how metrics are used and how they're made available or presented. Because it sounds like putting them at all on a public dashboard is a little bit concerning for scientific or research computing folks.
yeah, I don't, I mean, so it definitely is concerning. Excuse me, there definitely is concern now. It's not clear if the concern is just because we haven't done this before and they're kind of just scared of something new, or if there's something more substantial behind it. So
That makes sense. Human condition, people tend to reject or run from or be afraid of or resist new things, especially if there are implications. I mean, in this environment, there could be serious ramifications for one's livelihood,
yeah,
um, which it hadn't reached that thought before this, but as I think about the evolving ecosystem for research funding, that concern is going to get larger, I expect,
yeah,
at least in the short term. That does create an interesting set of problems. I wish Greg was here to talk to this. My impression is that they are proceeding quite carefully, and that the it's possible some of the concerns that you describe are reasons why we didn't go into much depth about any given project in the last call.
yep, yep, could be. Yeah, Greg is, sorry, I was chatting with Greg on Slack. He's traveling. I'm not sure if he's actually on a plane currently, but yeah.
Uh,
I assume he'll be back in the next one in a couple of weeks.
yeah, awesome.
This is very interesting, and I'm curious what key metrics you're collecting for, like, as part of the grant work for the Department of Energy.
Yeah, the project is sociologically complicated, where there's basically 6 different funded organizations that all have been told to work together. And working groups then cross those organizations, and most of those organizations then are also funding some software projects. And so there's a lot of different issues in kind of how everything comes together. There's 2 working groups uh, that are relevant here. So one is the metrics working group and the other is the impacts working group. And so the metrics working group basically is kind of thinking about what can be collected. And the impacts working group is thinking about kind of what should be collected, and they talk to each other. Or the impacts group also thinks about how do we use what we can collect. But it also does things like saying it would be nice if we could collect this, and then the metrics group can kind of go off and try to figure out, is it possible to do that or not, or how much work would it be? So just like as one example, there's some discussion going on about basically projects that use CMake
Yeah,
and kind of what can be done with those projects, and what can be automatically collected versus what can be manually collected. Sorry, and I'm not sure that I understand that part. I haven't been, I think some of the meetings that discuss that have been ones that I haven't been in, so I've just heard little pieces of this without hearing the whole story. But there does seem to be some complexity about what can be done automatically in some of these I don't know, code bases, I guess.
I wonder if the issue is CMake or if the issue is because CMake projects are often older and they tend and sometimes hosted at universities instead of on a GitForge or a Git
Yeah,
platform.
I don't think that's the issue. I think it's
Okay.
I think it's something about how the project is built makes it
Mhm.
hard to automate. Sorry, I'm not, I guess I shouldn't say anything that I don't really know.
Well, it's hard to, I mean, it's
So,
certainly harder to automate builds for with CMake on a Git platform. It requires a lot of knowledge of Docker.
yeah, but I don't actually feel like it's the build that's the issue. I think
Okay.
that part can be automated, but it's trying to do
Mhm.
some of it's trying to do some of the metrics, trying to collect some of the metrics afterwards. It seems like it's the challenge. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, I mean, if I had to guess, and I'm not completely sure that it's that the results of CMake are not consistent. Sorry, not the results of any individual project CMake, but the results of CMake across different projects can lead to kind of different kinds of structure. And those then can be hard to figure out how to automatically collect things from.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. There's a lot. Yeah, there are different ways to structure C source code.
Okay, I'm gonna
I know you
go.
have to go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
See you in a
All
couple
right.
weeks.
All right. See you in a couple weeks.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks,
Travel.
Vanessa. Travel safe, everybody.
Yeah. Enjoy Denver.
I will.